All right, welcome everyone to the Avengers Algorithms and Analytics panel. Looks like we're having some difficulties with the HDMI, so give us a second. Gonna give it a little bit of weight there. Okay, there we go. Just so everyone's aware, we're also live streaming on YouTube right now. So thanks for being part of a live audience. First off, we're gonna do some introductions. We're gonna use the Infinity Gauntlet. So we're gonna see what it would be like if a data scientist was holding it. We're doing a Marvel rapid fire, which is just gonna be quick correlations, analytics, and comic book events. We're going to talk a little bit about Marvel trading cards, specifically the MCU's impact. We're going to do a game time that we're going to call Marvel Team Ups, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So who are these two nerds anyway? Why are they here? I'll go first. I'm Tom. I'm a 10-plus year data scientist as my career. My job is to get you to spend more on your credit card through loyalty programs. So I want to use my skill set for something more fun and put some good out into the world. So we try to answer fun Comic-Con type questions like, oh, who wins in a fight, Batman or Spider-Man, with statistics to back it up.
Yeah. So my name is Steven. I was very fortunate to work in the video game industry with rather large IPs. I worked at Warner Brothers Boston studio called Turbine, and I worked on the very first game I worked on was Lord of the Rings Online, Dungeons and Dragons Online. I then moved more towards DC Comics games, Injustice 1, Injustice 2, Mortal Kombat X. Then I moved towards The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, and Star Trek. So very fortunate to work on IPs like that. The role I was in, I was a player advocate very much. So I was with the development team, being the voice of all players, even those who do not spend money. So I very much saw a lot of the dark side of what his job does, where they try to get people to spend money, but saw that from a video game perspective through PC and mobile games.
So let's dive right into it. Let's start using the Infinity Gauntlet. So with a snap of our fingers, we'll show you, if you understand the Infinity Stones, you understand analytics, you can get a job in the field. So what I mean by that is one of the best ways to really learn a new skill set is if it resonates with something that you love. So essentially, if you can have fun with it, you can then have fun with analytics, statistics, data science. We're going to break down the Infinity Stones and how their powers can be linked to analytics. We're going to uncover the drivers of the MCU. Does RDJ earn his paycheck? We're going to throw that into a model and try to prove it. And together, we're going to rebalance the Marvel Universe through propensity weighting. And I'm going to try to convince you that Howard the Duck is statistically most like Wolverine. So I want to start off with a little bit of a story time first. So this is going to be from my career. They wanted me to pitch a BI advanced analytics product to a client. And so I was never pitched to a client before. And I thought in my head, well, I can have some fun with it. So I actually broke down all the Infinity Stones and how it applies to my job, such as Time Stone, you can predict sales. Power Stone, you kick out your outliers. Soul Stone, you want to uncover what's in your data. Space Stone, you can travel back through reporting metrics. And then Reality Stone is like really get everything normalized. And then finally try to convince them. I pitched the idea, spent a lot of time on it. The sales team told me, hell no, you're not doing that. So the next day, the client who I was pitching to came around the office, came by my desk, had a bunch of knickknacks, Infinity Gauntlet that you could wear, and they were going nuts. They put it on, wanted photographs with it. And then the same sales people who told me no like said, oh, wait till you see his presentation tomorrow. It's going to wow you. And he's going to bring in an even better gauntlet. So wasn't really prepared, but we went ahead and did it. I brought a Legends Infinity Gauntlet in there, snaps and makes the noises. It went over well. But the point of that is like, it's easier to explain how the Infinity Gauntlet works to non-analytical people as opposed to like trying to explain a regression model and Pearson's correlations and really bore them to death.
Yeah.
Do you find that in like video games, similar approach?
In games, I would have to take that approach a lot because I worked directly with the development team and then all other aspects. So I also worked directly with players. So for The Walking Dead March to War, there was a period where we had soft launched that game in only 3 countries. And so if you were in China, Russia, or Germany and played that game and had any problem, you spoke directly to me. I was the only person, and we had millions of players. So I had to be able to take any player frustration and communicate that to analytics or game development and, hey, this is what they're actually feeling. Because your soft launch is very much, we think we're ready, and then we launch in a few countries, and you guys tell us if we are. And we found out very quickly we were not.
So first off, did RDJ earn his paycheck? How do we do this? We really want to understand what's driving revenue. So we do a multi-linear regression model, pretty much a slope of a line, but we throw in fun metrics in there. So what I've thrown into this model is Rotten Tomatoes scores, so critics and audience for each movie that I'm analyzing, the movie release year, time since the last MCU release. And the reason why I have that is I also want to test for story development. You know, are we hooked? Solo movie releases versus is it a team up? And finally, was Iron Man in the movie? I run this model, and pretty much what it'll shoot out to me is a formula, but also a table. That table is going to be key, and it's going to rank it by what's significant, what drives the most money. So a couple of call outs. I know he's going to react pretty interesting to some of these because he's not a fan of MCU Iron Man, but having Iron Man in the movie actually drove an incremental 100.5 million. So when I was doing this, I believe like the highest he got to at the time was like 75 million for a movie. And I was like, that's really high. Is it worth it? According to the model, it's saying like, okay, Disney actually made some money off of that deal. Secondly, the further along in the series, you start getting to at least 216 million. So there's your story development piece to it, like what works so well with the MCU. And here's some stats to prove it.
Yeah, I have a problem with the Iron Man stat just because I don't like Robert Downey Jr. I don't. It's not really a popular opinion, and I guess that's because he plays the character so well that I just dislike him as a person, and I get it. That's Tony Stark. So I see that number and I'm like, no person is worth that amount of money, but he clearly is. Because if he's only getting 75, they're making 25 off him just being in it. So that's kind of mind-boggling to me.
Another fun approach I like to use is a propensity model Z-score. So what you can do is actually power set the entire Marvel universe. How to do it though, that's where the struggle is. If you've ever gone to Marvel's website, like they'll have a power scale, but it's on individual clickable pages you have to go to. Luckily, there's mobile games. I know he doesn't like the back-end development of mobile games and microtransactions, but for this case, it really helped out because there was data sets I could scrape that already had all the power sets of the Marvel universe. So that's where Marvel Contest of Champion comes into play. So I'm able to pull all of that data into a model. There was one key element that I wanted to control for is how well a character is written in the comics, like how do you grab that type of data? It's not necessarily in a data set, not observational, but there's sometimes happy accidents. So when I was doing this analysis, Twitter, Marvel's Twitter was also running a poll of like a bracket of favorite Marvel characters. So I was able to scrape Twitter and get my data set. So this model we're going to do is try to predict if a character based off of the video game data would get more than the average votes from the Twitter poll. Here's an example of how it starts to rebalance. So just before we do this sampling, this model, if you break it down by just strength or HP, resistance, you get different views all over the place. What this is going to do is start grouping people together, such as Howard the Duck and Old Man Logan. Statistically, they're closest to each other. Dr. Octopus and Thor. At first, I thought that was kind of weird, like, oh, this doesn't pass the sniff test. Then I started researching people who play the game, and there's all YouTube videos about how Dr. Octopus is overpowered in the game, that he's on the level of Thor. So I was like, oh, there's my real life testing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because when you see that from a base value, you just think of the two characters. There's no way. One's like a febile old man who can just construct things. The other is a god. Doesn't work.
So now in this section, we're going to try to go quick and heavy, but in a fun way. You're going to see analytics approaches on the screen and its comic book or MCU counterpart. So, for example, machine learning is really Taskmaster. You think about Taskmaster's skill set, it'll take him some time, but he can mimic fighting styles. Same thing with machine learning. Machine learning is a bunch of algorithms working together, basing off of your sales data, what you're doing on the internet, and it'll start to predict your behaviors and habits. So to me, if you understand Taskmaster, you can get a job at Amazon.
Yeah. And that's the dangerous area that I see mobile games going, is because they're very competitive based. And I've worked on real-time strategy games, and there's always the fear of it being pay to win. And how quickly does that happen? How much money does it take for some person just to trounce everyone else? Algorithms like this, machine learning, makes me weary because it's going to start making offers to people that cater more towards their play style, which sounds good, but not when a player is just very, very aggressive. And they just get more deals to deal more damage, to attack more players. So that's like the scary part that I see.
And we're going to show two on the screen. If anyone's seen Marvel's Civil War, MCU, Thunderbolt Ross starts showing them videos of all the damage that they've done. My opinion is that the government should have ran an A/B testing model to see what it would look like if the Avengers didn't exist and all these catastrophes were happening. So that actually happens more in like the digital marketing space. They'll test email subject lines to see what drives more engagement. But if you understand the flaws of that movie, several flaws, but particularly that scene, you can do an A/B test on your own. Neural networks is Ultron. So neural networks work by just observing data, just more interactions. And it's like a live hive brain of machine learning. And my favorite take on Ultron, at least in the MCU, is like he spent 2 minutes on the internet and realized humanity's got to go.
Well, that's what everybody's seeing that now with those chat AI programs, where there's that one now that people are saying has the mind of a 9-year-old just from interacting with people on the internet for free.
It's a neural network, Ultron.
Yeah.
One of the biggest beefs with Infinity War is just like, okay, how did Doctor Strange see all of those probabilities so quickly? In my head, it goes to a logistic regression. So logistic regression will run multiple scenarios, and all you got to do is look for the one that's closest to 1. So also another route you could go with it, imagine like in the Matrix where Neo's being shown all the TVs, they're going off real quick and just one stays on. That's pretty much what a logistic regression is, what Doctor Strange did. Into the Spider-Verse is the perfect implementation of a random forest. So a random forest is, if you go back to the model we ran earlier on the MCU, a random forest can run about hundreds of those and tell you which is the best model. Think of Spider-Man throughout the Spider-Verse. Everyone's slightly the same, like you have the same basic what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man, but minor tweaks. So random forest, Spider-Verse.
So that gets dangerous in game development, especially mobile games, is seeing the incorporation of, mentioned on the previous slide, A/B testing. That currently happens a lot, where different regions' items will cost different prices. And it's not just based on the currency conversion. It's based on this type of game is played more in this country. These people spend more money on it. So let's increase our profit there. Problem there is players talk to each other. So you have people in clans in different countries are like, why did I get this item when my friend got this many for this much? The random forest is where I see it kind of going towards, where they're going to make little tweaks to where there's going to be so many. And that gets scary because then you think of NFTs, because games are moving towards, they want all the items to be unique. And that's where random forest comes in, where you could have unique items and the pricing is also unique based on how much do we know that person will spend.
Now we're going to go to a portion on Marvel trading cards and just some real world like application you can do more models on. So we're going to talk shiny cardboard here, specifically Marvel cardboard. It's been around since about the 1970s. There's a few 1960 sets out there as well. It's really starting to boom with the 1990 sets right now. So one of the anomalies during the pandemic that most of us might know about is just the influx and boom of just the collectibles industry, sports cards, Pokemon cards. Marvel got bit by the bug too. Pretty much the same with like crypto. All of them are linked together. There's also other factors in play, which we're going to test in the next section, is really the launch of Disney Plus, how that type of marketing event, I like to call it, will impact other areas. So first approach to this is just what data can I get out there, get a holistic view before we start doing any modeling. So this is actually TerraPeak sales through eBay, and I just grafted it over the past year or so of Marvel sales. Two big valleys and peaks jumped into my head. Something in February, which I know that's when WandaVision was launched. And then also towards the end of Q4 was just another spike. And from what I could see, it was precious metal gems and more modern type collecting going out there. So I wanted to do something that was more fun. So I said, I'm not going to look at the Q4 data. I'm just going to focus on Disney Plus and what impact that could drive. So this is a slide that just lets you know, like, we're not just looking at like 50 rows of data here. We've analyzed 6.12 million card sales from 34,000 unique sellers. Pretty much anyone who's in analytics is you need data points to get accuracy. I want to really get to incrementality as well. So there's going to be a control group set. So cards that weren't in the MCU, like they didn't at the time of this. Later on in this deck, you'll see Loki versus Daredevil. But at the time, No Way Home did not come out yet. So data is still good in my eyes. Treatment cards are going to be anyone who is in Disney Plus show, Marvel movie, trailer. there's going to be some surprising results
Yeah.
at first glance. So pretty much we went ahead and threw all the events in the model, and this is the incrementality against the control group, right? So within the first 30 days since the No Way Home trailer released, Spider-Man cards increased nearly 30% through eBay sales. Falcon and Winter Soldier, 30 days after the launch of the first episode, 15%. Black Widow movie, a minimal 1%. Loki cards actually saw a dip after the first episode, same as WandaVision.
Yeah.
Then we expanded out a little bit more to try to get to elasticity. Is anything sticky? Also, just knowing the show or the movie, and don't want to do spoilers for anyone who haven't seen yet, but it's been a while, right? Like, okay, what happens when Jonathan Majors showed up? And we know what we're finally building up to. And if you see Loki flipped from down 13% to now down 28%, or sorry, up 28%. That's where, like, okay, the story's developing. Here's He Who Remains coming. Falcon and the Winter Soldier increased even more as well. And then you see WandaVision started to lessen its gap. Then Spider-Man cards dipped over the next 30 days because it was just a trailer, not the movie. And Black Widow went into the negative. Anything stand out to you? Surprises?
The big things for me are it seems accurate for what I thought of those Disney Plus shows. Because both of those shows did take time to get started. Like after the first episode of WandaVision, I kind of didn't really know what kind of show it was. I was interested in it, but it didn't feel like a Marvel show. Loki, I was also just heavily interested in it, but I had no idea where it was going. So to see those actually turn around made sense because those both ended up being loved series. Falcon and Winter Soldier is surprising to me. I enjoyed that series, but I know a lot of people just did not. A lot of people felt it was very slow when I talked with them about it. So interesting that helped that much, especially because I don't really think people are attached to the Winter Soldier in the MCU. He kind of has no personality when I think about him.
So we can also enhance the model we just ran with one we walked you guys through earlier, which was the one that's saying, oh, Howard the Duck is like Logan. So we're going to leverage the propensity scores, right? Throw that into the model as well. Sorry, it's statistics heavy, but just showing we're not skipping any corners here. That leads us to matching Loki versus Daredevil, because in the propensity model, they're statistically almost identical. And you can start getting to a more like true sense of what's actually incremental. So this is Loki versus Daredevil, average price per seller up high for Loki within the first 30 and 60 days. You start to see it drop a little bit in the amount of cards being sold in 60. So if you remember from the previous slide, Loki took a much larger jump, but once you get it to incrementality, you start controlling for some of the noise. Then you can apply this to the entire data set as well. So the top half is before you do any modeling, and you start thinking like, oh, 14% lift. I should start going through my shoe boxes and list everything on eBay. Once you apply the model, 14% goes down to 2%, and then you can start having the discussion of like, am I still ROI positive at 2%? Take out eBay fees, shipping fees. You know, it might change your perspective a little bit. So cool that we did it for like a science project. So put your money where your mouth is. So I went ahead and implemented this monthly on our website. We also do a YouTube feed walking people through it, but we predict out the Marvel Universe cards, other sports cards as well, just where we think it's going based off of models. And it's pretty accurate, 4% mean average percent error. We predicted out 3 months at a time. The further on you go, you have to assume that it's all going to be junk, but it's just out there for collectors to just get smarter, more efficient. Don't go underwater trying to do this.
Which is really what does happen, because even it's just a thing where it's a hobby and it's very entertaining, so people really get into it, but you don't know where to start or what actually has value. So it's interesting to see the analytics behind it and see that that's really, a 2% return.
So I'm not daily scraping Terapeak, eBay by myself. One of the applications I leverage is Card Ladder. There's also other apps out there as well. So they do daily indexes, which is a segmentation of cards that you can track over time. So anything I'm using is out there, readily available for everyone else too. You can go into like just specific cards you're interested on and track them over time. A lot of data, but time to have fun. We're going to be giving away some fabulous prizes to volunteers. We grabbed this shirt because the convention table told us it was going to sell out in an hour. So hopefully it's something that you guys would want for free. We're going to need 5 volunteers. On the screen is going to be 3 characters. 2 of them are lookalikes, statistically speaking. We're going to tell you, or you're going to tell us which one is not like the others. So that fun game from Sesame Street. And just for participating, you'll get a pack of Spider-Man 2 Panini stickers, the Sam Raimi trilogy. First volunteer.
Anybody, just raise your hand. We'll just look at you and point on you. All right, what do we got? Who do you think is not like the other 2?
I think that Bishop.
All right, and how come? What?
I think the coloring is a little bit different, and like he uses like I don't think he uses like brown something that's purple, and the other 2 use like physical weapons.
It's true. Yeah, he is the only one out of them who's any kind of like magic or power based.
We're kicking out Kingpin. So.
And Bishop's kind of the only hero. I guess he's a hero. He's like the only one. I don't know.
We play this game with like every panel we do, different subjects, and there's usually only one gets it right out of all 5. But the key thing to go into this is remember it leverages the Twitter poll as well. So that's the thing, like popularity is into play,
Which is still also weird. I think Kingpin would be more popular than Taskmaster.
Yep.
He's at least more well known.
Round 2.
So I say Groot, and the reason for that is Black Panther and Psylocke have a much deeper intuition and insight, maybe into humanoid behavior. So I would say
We got our first win.
We do, and
Can we set a record?
I'm gonna give it a shirt.
The shirt.
Because I really like that answer, because I never thought of it, because I thought of Black Panther and thinking of it that way. I was like, he is somewhat very spiritual and internal. And yeah, I like it. Good answer.
Round 3. Wolverine, Blade, Punisher.
Any takers?
I would say, I really don't know, but I would say Punisher would belong in that group. Only because how can I say that? Like Punisher is just a man with vengeance. And Wolverine is a mutant, and Blade pretty much is a mutant too.
Yeah.
Due to how he was, he was born. So I was wrong.
Why are we wrong here? I want to know why.
So remember, it also leverages the contest of champion. data. So we're not always kicking out the lowest like powered one. So Blade's got like a really interesting skill set in the game. So more like mythical powers is how they classify him. So
Okay.
round 4.
Blue? Yeah.
Okay, I will back. So,
See, now you're thinking about how they fight the fight.
yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the pairings we do is like trick questions.
Yeah. So I will say Iron Man, like in the current state, right, that Robert Downey Jr. is no longer in the role. I don't think, or I don't know how much people will want to see that character portrayed by someone else. And it's an interesting matchup with the world and what we know that. I guess it's the current state of Iron Man's character.
Kicking out Black Widow. So it's really like the projectile fighting style from the game.
What that makes me think of though is I feel like the MCU, when they introduce X-Men, has a really big opportunity with Rogue. Because they tried with, Captain Marvel, and there was such a negative response to her for some reason. And I feel like Rogue is just, X-Men is just such a strong brand that I feel like they could really succeed with a physically strong female hero. I'd like it.
Last round, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Spider-Man. This is going to be a double packer.
Any takers? I'm a call on people.
Our Pokemon panel, he just threw packs at people. So
The first person was very surprised. I was like, oh, sorry. I was going to call on you because you were thinking.
I'm thinking Miss Marvel doesn't really belong with them because I think if these two and they try to have like a day job or a life. I don't know what Miss Marvel does in free time, but they're trying to balance.
we did it. We did it. First panel with 2 picked.
The best is we do a video game debate panel, and I have still never won. I've been doing it for 5 years.
So Miss Marvel pretty much in every game is like OG overpowered. So like statistically on the game data, she's nowhere near even Spider-Man. So same reason why they nerf her in every movie. Endgame, she's protecting the rest of the universe. And when she could easily duke it with Thanos.
Which I find really interesting because in the Marvel games like that, they're very, very focused and realistic with like the powers. Other panel we were talking about what's the Disney game that we do? The
Sorcerer's Arena.
Sorcerer's Arena. They were very much valuing princesses because like that's Snow White. If Marvel were to do that, you think Spider-Man would never lose a fight ever. He always gets up. Everybody loves him. So it's interesting to see them actually be honest there.
Yep. So now we'll open it up to QA portion. We're showing just a live stream in case anyone's got questions on YouTube too. But
Yeah.
So I was looking at the slide where you said that Iron Man was worth 145 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Did Robert Downey Jr. ever found out about it? Like, do they use this data to come up with their rates or contracts or?
I mean, I worked for Disney for 2 years, like in finance, before I got to my current company and current position. But Disney is analyzing data in fun, new, unique ways. So I wouldn't doubt that now they use that for the MCU as well. like just the stuff I know that they use magic bands for. It's like, oh, it's pitched as like a quality of life for when you're in the parks, but really it's trying to, now they know where you are and how they can push you to other stores, trying to make it seamless. Like same thing when they introduced like Genie Plus. The idea is to get you to be purchasing more merchandise, not having to wait in lines. So tons of analytics departments at Disney. They run their own conference on their site. It's like the Disney Data just Analytics Conference. It's great. I've been to it several times. If you work for them, they require you to go to it if you're in finance, analytics for them. But they're A/B testing everything. Not saying that like RDJ's team does any of that.
Yeah.
He probably has just like, okay, here's something in mind I'll agree to. But I'm sure Disney's doing all types of ROI modeling.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the thing. So Disney has to have that to know if his number's realistic or not. And what was it you had mentioned where Robert Downey Jr. doesn't sign cards anymore?
Yep.
He hasn't signed the cards. It was 2016, you had said?
I think it's later than that.
Later
Whenever
than that?
Iron Man 3 came out.
Yeah. So he knows the value of his name very much. That to Upper Deck, he can say, no, I'm not going to sign cards anymore. Huh?
Probably more anecdotally than with data, right?
Yeah.
When you do storage analysis and stuff, you take into consideration the actor. Because Loki, take the example, probably Tom Hiddleston wasn't Loki. I don't know how popular the character will be for non-Marvel fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have all of that.
So he's a very interesting actor to me because I almost wonder if his Marvel contract holds him out of other roles. Because I don't know if you saw, he did that show, The Night Manager. He's absolutely incredible in that show. It's The Night Manager season 1. That show's been gone for like 6 years now. Never done it again. His name always comes up. He'd make an incredible James Bond. Never always comes up in discussion. You never even hear him mention like what he thinks on it. And so you kind of wonder if he knows he's got Loki for the next decade. And that's going to be it. Yeah.
What is your take using predictive analytics? So now that they've kind of shut down moving over to DC, Black Adam, and James Gunn taking over the DC, where do you see predictive analytics getting involved into the where we might be headed area?
I mean, I'd be interested to see if they try to incorporate it into storylines somehow. Like the joke is like MCU's a formula, right? I don't see why DC wouldn't see what's successful and try to get predictive with it as well. James Gunn is like the master of taking like the C-rate character to those who aren't in the niche of reading in depth into the comics. Like he probably has a little formula he just does in his own head. He's not going to be involved in every project like he's doing reels and Twitter posts about, but it's, how do you get more James Gunn is pretty much like, in my job, they want to know how do they get more Toms, because you can't have just a human being be your BI product. That's not fair to me nor the company. So I'm being pushed to build like more analytics products in my day job. So I'm sure they're being pushed to like, okay, how do we build a trilogy most efficiently? They're going to be on a short rope, DC.
Yeah, you think it has to be heavily involved with the amount of cuts that they've been making with the content on HBO Max, and you have to think that everything they're doing right now is money decision based. And it's sad because there's a lot of content that's removed. Some of which that's going to be gone is I don't know if anybody ever watched that show Final Space.
cartoon on TBS, very similar to like Rick and Morty, but as out there. It's more like kind of like if Fox tried to do a show like that. And that's a show that is now never going to be anywhere. It's just going to be gone. No streaming services, nowhere. So it's just interesting to me that content disappears like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, well, that's my next one. I don't even know what data they will be looking at. I know they're looking at data, but you have Naughty Dog with The Last of Us, with their data dealing with HBO Max, and HBO Max looking at their data, and The Last of Us figure out where do they go from here because they got increase.
Yeah.
But did they have increase? Like,
Oh, there's absolute like
I feel they did, but I'm just saying they would probably look at all of that and figure out.
HBO did it. They honestly, I don't think they knew what they had as far as the fan base went, because they're now at the point where the average viewership of The Last of Us per episode, when they count streaming, is with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was 27 million, was its highest peak. The Last of Us hit 21 million after the third episode. So I think HBO knew they had a quality product. That's why they had the Chernobyl team on it. But I really don't think they knew it was going to be as big as they thought.
And was there increase with Naughty Dog? Because I feel like after watching Last of Us, I'm wondering, like, now I want to play the game. I'm not
Yeah.
purchasing it.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and then my huge thing with that too is I'm like, okay, well, let them do Uncharted now. Like, let Naughty Dog tell their other stories that are very, very well developed, like you're playing a movie, because they are that good.
But what you brought up, I'm always curious about is like that conversion type engagement rate. Like how many are now going to the game from Last of Us?
Yeah,
yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm thinking.
Surprisingly, I've never played the game. He plays it religiously,
I loved it.
you know, but now like the interest in the show, it's like, okay, can I, you know, maybe sacrifice some sleep while the kids are to bed at night and sneak in The Last of Us? But
Yeah. Has everybody here watched the show or no? Yeah, it's great. The show and the game, I have some differences in some character portrayals that I don't know. Pedro Pascal is really good, but there are just some times where he sounds like Joel and other times he doesn't. And I get it. It's fine. But really, Bella Ramsey as Ellie has been way better than I thought she was going to be. Because I was one of those people that I got stuck to seeing Ellen Page in that role because they modeled the character after her so well. So it was weird seeing somebody else, and then she just has nailed that character so good.
Side note, did they mean to do that? I thought I saw a lawsuit. Like she said, you guys stole my face.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where in video game development, we do pre-production. And in pre-production, we go out there and we steal images of everyone, of everyday people, and that just happens. So a lot of people think of it, the biggest one is go to every Square Enix cover of an RPG that they made throughout the 80s and 90s, and it's a David Bowie album cover. David Bowie has worn those outfits, and there are exact pictures of it. Metal Gear Solid, if you look at the original, like Metal Gear Solid that launched on like PS1, he's Tom Cruise. That's who they modeled Snake after. He's got the exact facial features. That's who it is. Mass Effect, Shepard, the base Shepard, there is a British underwear model that is him. And people have posted pictures where like, there's no way, like, does this guy know? And it's like, he has to, because it literally, you would think they mapped his face, but it just happens.
that are using the AI art programs.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. If they AI art programs, so there's an interesting one now that goes ahead and takes older, like SNES, like that era of RPGs, and using machine learning, it updates those textures by finding high-res images of like, these are thousands of images of bushes. And it goes ahead and finds the right shades and up-reses that. That's awesome. Now, the creepy AI art that takes everything and makes it into like a horror movie, I
don't want to see that ever used in games. And I like horror movies and I like horror games, but I don't think every art style needs to be that. It's very strange. I had fun with them though. I forget which one it was. There was one that I did the beta for where I was in a Discord. It was good.
What was it?
Yeah, there was one on Discord that I want to say was Mind Journey, where I was in the beta for that, and the way the Discord channel worked was you could type any prompt. So I think it was up to 12 letters or 12 words. And so I typed just ridiculous things. Like I did like Danny DeVito riding a dragon. I just wanted to see if it would do it. And yeah, it was everything you would get was very nightmarish, but it was fun. Unless you put words like descriptive words like happy. And I was like, okay. If you said like sunny, but if you just put a person's name, like an actual person, and then doing something, it was always weird. John Oliver did an episode about it where there was like thousands of images of him made by people. And he was like, why are people doing this? Yeah, that's the exact one I used, whatever that one was. But I was doing stuff, putting people that like I know in real life from like working with video games. So I'm like, oh, that's a real person. Like he was on stage at E3. Let's have him bake a cake. Silly stuff.
Fun.
Any other questions? Anybody? Anything? I'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
What do we got?
I put up the Smash deck.
Oh, okay.
So just showing that we try to expand into as many categories as we can. So this was like who should be your main in Smash Brothers. We ran a k-means segmentation, so clustering algorithm. We traveled it through time, through different games, standardized our variables, did more propensity modeling, broke it into tiers, and eventually it gets you towards the bottom, who you should be using. So she was up on top. Had to do like YouTube research again, like was this thing accurate? We were at New Orleans Fan Expo last month, and in the Smash tournament, someone who made it far in the tournament was using her. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, awesome. That's like validation of the model.
Yeah,
Real
especially-
life again.
We're not good at Smash Brothers at
No.
all. I'm the most annoying player in that game because I just don't understand it. I will forever be like a Street Fighter player, and playing Smash Brothers, I just don't get it. So I'm just Mario going woohoo, woohoo the whole time.
Yeah, like I am awful at video games, but I'm going to pull up something that I used. Yep, and I didn't tell him about it, but we played each other in Injustice.
Oh, okay.
And I was picking some of random, he thought was random characters, but I already ran this model and I was just testing it on him. And I swept the floor with him. He was using like Superman against me. I was using Green Arrow, Cyborg, just who was in like the top of this model prediction.
So working on Injustice was really fun. So when we were doing Injustice 2, Warner Brothers did a company-wide tournament where it was just, hey, we're all testing it. And that's where you see, there's the whole thing where they say that game developers are like never good at their game. It's really just that a lot of times game developers, people forget that it's a job. So you're working on genres you don't really enjoy yourself sometimes. So that was fun to see the developers getting destroyed by the kids who work in fan services, who are just like crushing them. Like I'm talking people like not even like they're getting perfect, and it's like you made the combat system, and this kid answers stuff on like the official Warner Brothers forum. Like okay, I was not good at. I was good at. I worked on around 18 games, and I was probably good at 2 of them, to be honest. But I'm a big first-person shooter player, and I never worked on any.
And this one we looked at, was there a reason to not use I think this was the Is it the Wii or the Switch? Yeah, it's got to be the Switch.
Yeah.
Yep, to upgrade your Joy-Con to a controller. So, and just the reason to play like Mario Kart for hours against each other. But the player that switched to a controller each time after using the Joy-Con, like their placement points went up an average 6.5. So,
Yeah.
and that's controlling for characters they were using, the level we were at, different classes in there. So it's like, man, unfortunately, again, you need to spend some money.
Yeah.
It's like one of those hypotheses I was hoping was going to be wrong when we were testing
But
it.
no, if you want to be good at games now, you have to spend some kind of money.
Pay to play.
Yeah, free to play is not real. It isn't. The odds are you're going to see somebody in some kind of costume that you're like, ooh, I want that. And then you'll see it in the store, and it also comes with a gun that you can't get any other way. And you're like, oh, I need it now. That's what makes it very difficult interacting with kids who play games now. Because in Fortnite, everybody is used, like, a battle pass is something that is very not good to me. Like I never, I grew up GoldenEye, Halo 1, never had to experience any of that kind of stuff. And then now seeing kids are just so normalized to it. Where it's like, oh yeah, it's just $5. I'm like, you know what $5 is worth? Like we can go get food. Like you need to live and eat food. Like, but yeah, so it's just interesting that that's become the standard now that every game comes out with a battle pass.
Yeah. We've also run a survival models on surviving in Westeros.
Yep.
We also did one for Hogwarts, like likelihood that Voldemort will get you, based off of like which house you're sorted into. Are you friends with Harry Potter? Yes or no? Do you play Quidditch? So just
don't be his friend ever. Just don't do it.
We have too much free time on our hands.
Yeah.
Board games, cosplay. Just try to analyze things that people would have fun with. The board game one was interesting. Like we were testing to see what's making games rated so high. And I think it shot out, it was like fantasy themed and longer gameplay.
Yeah.
Like that's where the correlation was.
Game length was really big.
Yeah. So.
And that's something that I find interesting because I think board games in general are something that has grown with their audience in a way that a lot of video game series have not. So I could have grown up playing Sorry or playing Candyland. And then, I'm in my 30s and I can go out and now play whatever level of risk or competitive game against other people. I feel like in video games, I can't really do that with a lot of the IPs that I love. Like I can't go play Pokemon now how I would want to play it. Now it's very much geared towards children. And board games, I feel like we see a lot of, that's why the play length is very important in the game being rated well.
Yeah.
Because an adult can play an hour, a 2-hour game.
Yeah. So like on the screen right now, the output shows me if it meets these check marks, it's an adventure game. There's an exploration element to it, and it's based off of a video game IP. There's like a 98% probability that it'll be rated like highest of all time if the gameplay on average also takes 180 minutes. Like flip side of the coin of that is like if it's a card game, it has some deduction, horror, humor, murder element to it, and it's finished in 20 minutes or less, like it's only 20% chance that it'll be rated high.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is like,
and that's
how
also,
engaged you are.
Yeah, and that's also interesting because when you think about it too, games that are 20 minutes or less, that's where we're getting a lot of influx of like card games because of Cards Against Humanity, and you just see tons of like Exploding Kittens, all that stuff.
Yep.
Throw burrito. Yeah.
That sort of happened with the first-person shooters like Battlefield and Modern Warfare.
Yeah.
They have these long campaigns, and as they move towards pushing everyone towards multiplayer, the campaigns got to be like 4 hours, 5 hour campaigns.
You're lucky to get 8. You're lucky now.
Especially
Yeah.
but they want you to finish the campaign and go to multiplayer. And so many people go straight to multiplayer.
Because they let you install it first now, too.
They don't invest the time in developing a long campaign.
Yeah. Oh, it's one of my biggest problems from working in game development, because I was lucky to start with Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons, where we were very story focused. They were MMOs, but we were very much, people came for the story and to play a single player experience. I got to see moving towards mobile and more competitive games that it's very money based. You have a hard time selling a single player game if it's not a AAA experience. If it is not, if the player does not see the game and visually they think it's a movie, they're not going to pick it up. It's so sad. And I'm a big graphics and performance person as well, but I think of that on the multiplayer side because I don't want to play a buggy multiplayer game. But when I think of single player, I want an engaging story. Like I actually enjoyed some of the Call of Duty campaigns. I used to enjoy the Battlefield ones because they took you everywhere, all across the world. Now it's just, they're going away and it's sad.
I'm a Mass Effect player.
Yeah.
I will put 80 hours per character.
Yeah.
And I have 13, 14. Yeah, 13,
Oh, I'm one of the people, I loved Andromeda.
That's the experience I want.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like game companies are doing that.
Yeah. For me, like, I understand why BioWare is literally not showing us anything in the next Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that game makes or breaks their entire studio. That and Dragon Age, we've lost faith in both of those franchises because they were buggy. The story's there. It could be huge. I'm hoping The Last of Us getting so big maybe gets us more like campaigns, but it's hard. It's a hard sell because they take so long to make that quality too. Like Red Dead Redemption took so many years, and then horror stories of people working crazy hours. I work 90-hour weeks on mobile games. So to think of going ahead and making something that's all encompassing to where like you have to believe an actor, I can't even imagine the amount of people and just how dedicated every person has to be. And then for that to come out and the fear of no one playing it, like Callisto Protocol, their sales are terrible right now. And it's because they came out, visually they look great, but it was buggy. And then the Dead Space remake came out like 2 months after them. But I have a friend who worked on Callisto Protocol, and it's tough because they were so excited. They had so much hype. They were getting projected at millions of sales. And then, on to the next one.
Andromeda.
Yeah.
So did Anthem.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Put the city on the ropes.
Yeah. So I loved Andromeda, but it was so buggy. That was my problem. Like getting stuck on rocks and things like that, where I'm like, this should not happen in like a final game, especially one that I could play cooperatively with other players. So then all my friends, we're all getting stuck on the environment and we're all laughing about it. And that's when it goes viral on the internet and no one plays it. Like Anthem had good core gameplay. If you told me that was an Iron Man game, if you were like, hey, I'm making Iron Man, you can fly around and Iron Man gets all these different guns and weapons and it's great. But the fact that they told me they're building this entire universe that's going to last a decade, like I'm not surprised it lasted less than 18 months. Like you're selling me on something that you have not made yet. That's why I love talking about No Man's Sky, because No Man's Sky is good now. If you have not played that game since they launched, Sean Murray has supported that game even though people don't want him to. Like people are like, please stop. Like we don't believe what you say. But if you play it now, there are giant sandworms. There are things in it that he didn't even mention. Like, yes, full multiplayer is there, but now you also have mechs and building bases underwater and all this stuff. So it's just nuts to think such creative experiences get made and then it can just be gone in a day, especially on Steam. I feel bad for a lot of PC players because Steam, it's almost like you have to do a small like alpha release to even build hype for your game now. Because if you put it out without an alpha, nobody knows it existed, and it's just gone in a day. Thousands of games come out a day on Steam. So it's tough.
And we're out of time, but thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, thank you guys.
If you enjoyed it, you want access to the data tools, they're on the website, pancakebreakfaststats.com. Really long name, funny name, but everything for free, searchable. Reach out to us on IG, give us suggestions, what you want to look into, and we'll see what we can run. So,
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And goodbye, YouTube.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.